The dark truth about school: it was never about learning. Let me ask you a question that's going to bother you for the rest of your life if you take it seriously. Why did you really go to school? Don't say to learn, because we both know that's not entirely true. If school was really about learning, why did it feel like a prison? Why were you punished for asking the wrong questions, or for not sitting still, or for not memorizing something you could just Google later? From the moment you stepped into a classroom, you were placed into a system, not a sanctuary of wisdom, but a factory of obedience. And for most of us, we never even realized it. We thought we were being educated, when in reality we were being conditioned, trained, molded, not into thinkers, but into workers, into followers, into people who are smart enough to operate the machine, but never to question who built it. Noam Chomsky once said that the education system isn't designed to foster independent thought, it's designed to produce obedience. And when you look at how school is structured, it's hard to argue otherwise. Bells tell you when to move. Desks are lined up in rows like factory stations. Authority figures demand compliance, not curiosity. Grades become currency for self-worth. You are punished for failure rather than taught how to navigate it. And worst of all, you are never taught to ask why the system exists in the first place. Have you ever wondered why creativity dries up in school? Why kids who were once curious about everything slowly become silent, anxious, or indifferent? School doesn't kill creativity by accident, it kills it because creativity is dangerous to a system built on conformity.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
But this isn't a conspiracy. It's more insidious than that. It's a subtle, systemic truth that's hiding in plain sight. The modern education system, especially in industrial societies, was designed during the rise of the Industrial Revolution. Factories needed workers, efficient, disciplined, and compliant workers, not inventors, not poets, not rebels. School became the place where children were shaped into future employees. The curriculum was standardized, not to inspire minds, but to standardize minds. The same way you'd manufacture screws or bolts, uniform parts, replaceable, predictable. Ask yourself, when was the last time school taught you how to think instead of what to think? And yet, we still send our kids into this system. We call it education, but it's more like indoctrination. You learn to sit still, follow orders, and not cause trouble. You learn that authority is always right, that questioning the curriculum is dangerous, and that your value is determined by a letter grade. But here's the real kicker. This system doesn't just affect your childhood. It affects how you see the world for the rest of your life. You grow up thinking your worth is tied to productivity, that your time must be scheduled and optimized, and that failure is shameful. That success is defined by how well you conform to what others expect of you. And then you wonder why so many people feel lost, anxious, unfulfilled. It's because they were never allowed to explore who they really are. They were too busy becoming who they were told to be. Let's go even deeper. What is education supposed to be? At its core, education should be the awakening of the soul, the ignition of curiosity, the deepening of awareness. Not just learning facts, but learning how to ask the right questions, how to challenge assumptions, how to think critically, feel deeply, and live authentically. But that kind of education doesn't serve the interests of power, because a person who truly thinks for themselves is ungovernable. They can't be manipulated by propaganda. They can't be sold empty dreams. They don't buy into the illusion that success is a bigger house, a faster car, or a title before your name. They see through it, and that makes them dangerous. So ask yourself this: what if the very thing you believed was helping you grow was actually keeping you small? What if the system that promised to enlighten you was actually just preparing you for obedience? It's a terrifying thought, but it's also liberating, because the moment you see the cage, you can begin to escape it. You can begin to re-educate yourself, not in the sense of memorizing more information, but in the sense of rediscovering your own mind, your voice, your vision. You can start asking the questions school never wanted you to ask. What is success really? What does it mean to live a good life? Who am I beneath all the labels society gave me? Here's the truth: school was never about you. It was never about your dreams, your passions, your inner fire. It was about making you fit into a machine that doesn't care if you're happy, so long as you're productive. But you are not a cog. You are consciousness. You are possibility. You are a mind that cannot be contained by a curriculum or a classroom. So where does this leave us? If the system is broken or worse, functioning exactly as intended, then what do we do? How do we reclaim our minds, our time, our lives? That's what we'll explore in the next part, where we'll uncover how this system continues to control us even after we leave the classroom, and how the illusion of freedom keeps us enslaved without chains. The curriculum of control: how school trains you to accept a life you never chose. Let's be brutally honest, most of us don't live the lives we truly desire. We live the lives we were told to want. And that programming didn't begin in adulthood. It began the moment we entered the education system. School didn't just teach us math, science, and history. It taught us how to think about life itself. It set the boundaries of what was realistic, what was admirable, and what was possible. And perhaps most dangerously, it trained us to accept a life built on quiet compliance. We weren't just taught arithmetic, we were taught to wait, to ask for permission, to follow rules that made no sense, but to suppress our instincts, to trade our curiosity for order. That's not education, that's psychological conditioning. Think about the way school structures your day. Every hour of your life is controlled by someone else. Bells dictate your movements like Pavlov's dogs. You're told when to speak, when to listen, when to eat, and when to think. You're rewarded for obedience and punished for deviation. But here's the wild part: when you graduate, that structure doesn't disappear, it simply transforms. Instead of a teacher, it's now a boss. Instead of grades, it's now performance reviews. Instead of detention, it's now debt. The habits you learned in school, habitual obedience, fear of failure, dependence on external validation, those habits become the architecture of your adult life. You become a perfectly trained citizen, docile, productive, and silently frustrated. Ask yourself, did you choose your life or did you accept it? Because there's a massive difference. Choosing your life requires deep awareness, rebellion, and the willingness to walk alone. Accepting your life is easier. It's comfortable. It's what most people do. And that's not because they're weak, it's because they've been trained since childhood to believe that freedom is dangerous, that questioning is disrespectful, and that success is just fitting in better than everyone else. The education system doesn't prepare you to live authentically, it prepares you to perform, to play roles, to meet expectations you never set for yourself. And in doing so, it disconnects you from your own inner compass. Let's go even deeper. Why are you so afraid of failure? Why do you feel anxious when you're uncertain? Why do you constantly seek approval? Those aren't natural traits, they're learned responses. You were taught to fear failure because failure in school meant shame. It meant falling behind. It meant being labeled. But in life, failure is the birthplace of wisdom. It's where all your deepest growth happens. And yet, most of us avoid it like a disease. Why? Because school conditioned us to associate failure with inferiority, not as a lesson, but as a verdict on our worth. And now, as adults, we paralyze ourselves trying to avoid the same feeling. School also teaches you that questions have one correct answer, and that answer is already known. But life isn't like that. Life is messy, uncertain, full of paradoxes and mystery. Real thinking isn't about memorizing answers, it's about learning to live in the tension of not knowing. And yet, how many of us were ever taught how to navigate uncertainty? How to listen to our intuition? How to pursue joy instead of approval? Almost none. Because those are dangerous skills in a society that profits from your discontent. If you actually loved yourself, you wouldn't need half the things the economy wants to sell you. If you knew how to sit in silence, they couldn't sell you noise. If you trusted your own mind, you couldn't be manipulated. So here's the uncomfortable truth. School doesn't just train you to accept authority, it trains you to internalize it. Eventually, you don't even need anyone telling you what to do. You do it to yourself. You wake up, go to work, suppress your dreams, and call it being responsible. You silence your creativity and call it maturity. You follow a path you didn't choose and call it destiny. But who benefits from that? Because it's not you, and it's not the people you love. It's the system, the machine, the one that needs you to be occupied, anxious and endlessly striving but never fulfilled. Here's a question that could change your life. What would you be doing if you had never gone to school? Not in the sense of practical skills, but in the sense of how you see yourself. Who would you be if no one had ever ranked you, labeled you, or told you what success was? That version of you still exists, buried beneath years of programming. And the journey back to that version of yourself isn't easy. It requires unlearning, questioning, and a kind of inner rebellion. But it's the only path to freedom that's truly yours. In the next part, we'll explore how even after we leave school, the psychological cage follows us, how our jobs, our culture, and even our relationships are shaped by the same invisible curriculum. And more importantly, how to break that cycle before it breaks you. Graduated but still enslaved, why your job, your life, and your dreams are still controlled, so you made it. You graduated, you tossed your cap in the air, smiled for the pictures, and maybe even felt a flicker of freedom. But that feeling didn't last, did it? Because almost immediately you were pushed into the next system, the job market, the economy, the real world, as they call it. And if you were paying attention, you might have noticed something strange. This new world looked eerily similar to the old one. The desks became cubicles. The teachers became managers. The report cards became performance reviews. And just like in school, you were told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. You traded one prison for another. Only now, you're not just giving away your time, you're giving away your life. The truth is, most people never leave school. They just stop attending the building. But the psychological conditioning, the need for approval, The fear of failure, the addiction to structure remains. And it follows you into your career, your relationships, even your dreams. That's the real genius of the system. It doesn't need to control you externally because it's already programmed you internally. You become your own warden. You self-censor your ideas. You suppress your desires. You stay in jobs you hate because they offer security. You chase promotions instead of purpose. You consume to feel better and produce to feel worthy. And all the while, you wonder why you're exhausted, anxious, and unfulfilled. Do you see the pattern yet? School didn't prepare you for life, it prepared you for survival. It didn't teach you how to thrive, it taught you how to obey. So when you step into the workforce, you don't question the absurdity of working 40 hours a week at a job you don't love. You don't question why your passions are hobbies and your job is your identity. You don't question the fact that you spend most of your waking life building someone else's dream while yours collects dust. Because questioning is dangerous, and you were taught not to be dangerous. You were taught to be useful. Here's the part that hurts the most. Even your dreams have been colonized. Think about it. When you imagine success, what do you see? A house? A car? A title? A bank account? Are those your dreams, or were they sold to you? We live in a culture that defines happiness through consumption and success through status. And that's not by accident. Because a population that defines itself by what it owns is a population that can be easily controlled. They'll work harder, spend more, compete endlessly, and never look inward. And that's perfect for the machine, but devastating for the soul. So many of us are chasing goals that don't even belong to us. We're climbing ladders that lead nowhere. We're filling our lives with noise to avoid the silence that might expose the truth. We're not truly living, we're performing. We're acting out roles that were written for us before we could even speak. And the worst part, we call it normal. But is it normal to spend the majority of your life doing something you don't love for a reward you don't need to impress people you don't care about? Or is that just what you were trained to accept? We need to wake up. Because the system doesn't end at graduation, it adapts. It evolves. It disguises itself as opportunity, as responsibility, as success. But underneath it all, it's the same machinery of control. You weren't meant to live like this. You weren't born to pay bills and die. You were born to create, to feel, to explore, to love, to awaken. But that version of life requires something terrifying, freedom. And freedom requires something even scarier, responsibility. Not the kind of responsibility school taught you, where you follow rules and show up on time. I'm talking about the responsibility to choose your own path, to define your own values, to live a life that's true to you, not the system. So ask yourself, are you actually free or just comfortable in your cage? Because comfort is the enemy of awakening. It lulls you to sleep. It makes you forget that you once had dreams bigger than a paycheck. It convinces you that safety is more important than purpose. But deep down, you know the truth. You feel it every time you wake up dreading the day. Every time you silence your inner voice for the sake of fitting in. Every time you trade authenticity for approval. In the next part, we're going to break the illusion completely. We'll talk about how to deprogram yourself, how to reclaim your mind, and how to finally live a life that's yours unfiltered, unapproved, and undeniably free. Unlearn everything, how to reclaim your mind and escape the invisible cage. If you've stayed with me this far, it means something inside you has already begun to stir. Maybe it's a quiet voice you've ignored for years. Maybe it's a question you've been afraid to ask. Or maybe it's just a feeling that something about the life you were handed doesn't quite fit. Whatever it is, honor it, because that feeling is your soul knocking. It's the part of you that school couldn't kill. The part that still remembers what freedom tastes like. And if you want to reclaim your life, you have to unlearn everything you were taught in captivity. Let's start with the mind. School taught you to be passive, and to absorb, to memorize. But real thinking isn't passive, it's active. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, it's rebellion. To truly think for yourself is to set fire to every inherited belief and watch what survives the flames. You have to question everything, your values, your goals, even your identity. Ask yourself, who told me what success looks like? Who decided what kind of life is realistic? Who benefits from me believing I'm not enough? These aren't questions school encouraged you to ask, but they're the only questions that lead to freedom. Next, you have to reclaim your time. Time is life. And yet, most people spend the majority of their time doing things that drain them, for people who don't value them, in pursuit of goals that don't fulfill them. That's not living, that's surviving. And survival is what school trained you for. But you don't have to stay there. You can choose to build your life around what energizes you instead of what exhausts you. Around what calls to your soul instead of what feeds your ego. That might mean walking away from a job, a relationship, or a dream you inherited but never chose. And yes, it will be terrifying, but fear is proof you're leaving the cage. Third, you have to reclaim your inner voice, that quiet intuition that school taught you to ignore. Remember how you raised your hand for permission to speak, how you were told that the answer was wrong if it didn't match the textbook. That kind of conditioning doesn't disappear overnight, but it can be unraveled. Start by listening to yourself again. Not the voice of fear, not the voice of comparison, but the voice of truth. The one that whispers when you're still. The one that knows what you love, what you need, and what you were born to do. And that voice is your compass. Trust it. Finally, you have to redefine what it means to live a good life. School taught you to chase achievement. Culture taught you to chase status. But neither of those lead to peace. And peace is what you're really after, isn't it? Not the kind of peace that comes from escaping problems, but the kind that comes from alignment, from living in harmony with your values, your purpose, your truth. That kind of life doesn't come from following the system. It comes from stepping outside of it. So here's the final question I'll leave you with. What would your life look like if you were truly free? Not just financially free or socially free, but mentally free. Free from fear. Free from shame. Free from the stories you were told about what's possible. Can you imagine it? Can you feel it? And that vision is not a fantasy. It's a future that's waiting for you. But you have to choose it. You have to fight for it. You have to unlearn everything they taught you and remember everything you already know. Because in the end, the dark truth about school is this: it was never about learning. It was about forgetting. Forgetting your power. Forgetting your voice. Forgetting that you are not here to fit in, you are here to wake up. And now that you know, the only question left is, what are you going to do with your freedom?